The biting wind whipped prayer flags into a frenzy, their faded colors blurring against the stark gray sky. Incense smoke, thin and ethereal, snaked upwards, struggling against the relentless gusts. A woman, her face etched with worry lines as deep as mountain crevasses, knelt precariously close to the cliff edge. Her lips moved silently, reciting words only the mountain gods could hear. They all say that the saint of Tian Shan is the most effective. Please bless my son to wake up. Each syllable was a plea, a desperate bargain offered to the unforgiving heavens. She hadn't slept properly in weeks, her son's illness consuming her waking thoughts and haunting her dreams. Beichen, her brilliant, vibrant Beichen, reduced to a silent, motionless shell. The doctors, with their sterile pronouncements and baffled shrugs, had offered no solace. Only the whispers of ancient legends, tales of miraculous healings at this sacred peak, had given her a sliver of hope, a fragile thread to cling to in the face of despair. A sudden, violent gust tore at her shawl, momentarily blinding her. She stumbled, the edge of the precipice yawning beneath her. A gasp escaped her lips, a strangled sound lost in the wind's roar. She braced herself for the inevitable fall, a fleeting image of Beichen's pale face flashing before her eyes. Then, a hand, firm and warm, closed around her arm, pulling her back from the brink. The world stopped spinning. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. She blinked, her vision clearing. Standing before her was a woman, her features obscured by the swirling snow. As the wind momentarily died down, the woman's face came into focus, a striking blend of strength and serenity. Her eyes, dark and luminous, held a depth that seemed to see straight through her. "Madam, let's forget it. You're not in good health," the woman's voice, clear and resonant, cut through the wind's howl. It was a simple statement, devoid of judgment or pity, yet it resonated with a strange authority. The older woman, still trembling, stared at her rescuer, her mind struggling to comprehend the near-fatal moment she had just experienced. Who was this woman? And how did she appear so suddenly, as if conjured by the mountain itself? "Thank you," she managed to whisper, her voice hoarse with emotion. "Thank you for saving me." Yi Fuyao, the Kunlun saint disguised in ordinary clothes, offered a small, almost imperceptible nod. She had sensed the woman's despair, the raw, potent energy of a mother's love clinging to the mountain's thin air. It had drawn her here, a silent summons she couldn't ignore. She felt a pang of sympathy, a fleeting connection to this woman's anguish. Beichen's plight was intertwined with her own mission, a piece of the intricate puzzle she was trying to solve. The Jade Demon's influence was spreading like a malignant shadow, and Beichen was but one of its victims. "Your son," Fuyao began, her voice carefully neutral, "he suffers from a unique ailment." The woman's eyes widened, a flicker of hope igniting within their depths. "You know about Beichen?" she asked, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and anticipation. Fuyao nodded, her gaze fixed on the distant horizon, where the snow-capped peaks kissed the clouds. "I know more than you think." The woman, Liu Beichen's mother, felt a surge of both apprehension and desperate hope. This mysterious woman, with her calm demeanor and knowing eyes, seemed to possess an otherworldly aura. Could she be the answer to her prayers? Hours later, within the opulent yet sterile confines of the Liu family mansion, the air crackled with unspoken tension. Fuyao, now seated across from Liu Beichen's mother in a room filled with the suffocating scent of antiseptic and lilies, observed the older woman with a detached curiosity. Beneath the veneer of composure, she sensed a deep-seated fear, a desperation clinging to the edges of her carefully constructed facade. "You say you can cure him?" Madame Liu's voice was barely a whisper, her eyes fixed on Fuyao's face, searching for any hint of deception. Fuyao's expression remained impassive. "The curse is complex," she admitted, her fingers tracing the rim of her teacup, a delicate porcelain piece adorned with intricate blue and white designs. "It will take time, and cooperation. Internally, she weighed her words carefully. Revealing too much too soon could jeopardize everything. The Jade Demon's influence ran deep, and its followers were cunning and ruthless. Madame Lu leaned forward, her gaze unwavering. "Tell me what you need." "Anything. I will do whatever it takes to save my son." Desperation had eroded her initial reservations. This woman, with her quiet confidence and unsettlingly perceptive eyes, was her last hope. Fuyao's lips curved into a faint, enigmatic smile. "Marriage," she said, the word hanging in the air like a fragile ornament, threatening to shatter at any moment. "I need to be married to your son to break the curse." Madame Lu recoiled as if struck. Marriage? To this stranger? The idea was preposterous, yet the flicker of hope in her heart refused to be extinguished. Her mind raced, weighing the absurdity of the request against the agonizing reality of Beichen's condition. Could this be some elaborate con? But the woman's eyes, they held no trace of avarice, only a strange, unsettling intensity. "But he's," Madame Lu stammered, unable to articulate the painful truth of her son's paralysis. "I am aware of his condition," Fuyao interrupted, her voice calm and steady, as though discussing the weather. "It is, after all, a consequence of the curse." A heavy silence descended upon the room, broken only by the rhythmic ticking of a grandfather clock in the hallway. Madame Lu's internal struggle was a tempestuous sea, warring emotions crashing against the shores of her reason. Could she entrust her son's fate, the future of the Lu family, to this enigmatic woman? Meanwhile, in the sterile white confines of his hospital room, Lu Beichen stared at the ceiling, his mind a swirling vortex of frustration and despair. The paralysis, a cruel mockery of his former vitality, had imprisoned him within his own body. He was a prisoner in a gilded cage, his thoughts his only companions. He heard the hushed whispers outside his door, the strained tones of his mother's voice, and a new, unfamiliar voice that resonated with a strange, unsettling power. He strained to hear their words, to decipher the meaning of their hushed conversation, but his efforts were futile. What were they discussing? What new treatment, what new false hope were they clinging to now? The door opened, and his mother entered, her face a mask of barely concealed anxiety. Behind her, the woman from the mountain followed, her presence filling the room with an inexplicable energy. He looked at them, his heart pounding against his ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. What was happening? What were they planning? "Beichen," his mother began, her voice trembling with a mixture of apprehension and determination, "this is Miss Yi. She believes she can cure you." Lu Beichen's gaze shifted to the woman standing beside his mother. Their eyes met, and a jolt of something akin to electricity passed between them. He saw a flicker of something ancient and powerful in her dark, luminous eyes, something that both terrified and intrigued him. He opened his mouth to speak, to question, to challenge, but the words caught in his throat. Days later, amidst the opulent grandeur of the Lu family estate, a hastily arranged wedding ceremony took place. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine and unspoken tension. Lu Beichen, dressed in a custom-tailored suit that concealed the lifelessness of his legs, sat in his wheelchair, his face an impassive mask. He watched as Yi Fuyao, radiant in a crimson qipao, walked towards him, her every movement imbued with a quiet grace that belied the power she concealed. He felt a strange mix of resentment and fascination, a volatile cocktail of emotions churning within him. This marriage, a bizarre pact born of desperation and shrouded in mystery, was a gamble, a desperate throw of the dice in a game with stakes he couldn't fully comprehend. As the ceremony progressed, a storm gathered outside, mirroring the tempest within him. The wind howled, rattling the windows, and lightning illuminated the room in brief, stark flashes. At the moment the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, a deafening clap of thunder shook the very foundations of the house. The lights flickered and died, plunging the room into darkness. Then, a strange, ethereal glow emanated from Fuyao, illuminating her face with an otherworldly light. She raised her hand, and a shimmering, golden energy flowed from her fingertips, enveloping Liu Beichen in a warm, pulsating embrace. He gasped, feeling a tingling sensation coursing through his veins, a spark of life igniting within his numb limbs. He could feel his toes, his fingers, the muscles in his legs twitching with newfound life. He looked at Fuyao, his eyes wide with disbelief and a dawning comprehension. This woman, his wife, was not who she seemed. She was something more. Something powerful, something ancient, something magical. As the lights flickered back on, revealing the stunned faces of the guests, Su Jiming stood at the back of the room, his face contorted in a mask of rage and disbelief. His plan, his meticulously crafted scheme to usurp his uncle's power, was crumbling before his eyes. This woman, this interloper, had thwarted him. He glared at Fuyao, his eyes burning with venomous hatred. This was not over. This was just the beginning. The crisp mountain air, scented with pine and damp earth, did little to soothe the tremor in Fuyao's hand as she pressed it against the elderly woman's chest. Sunlight, splintered through the canopy of leaves overhead, dappled the woman's pale face. Each shallow breath was a fragile whisper against the backdrop of the rustling leaves. Such a frail life force, Fuyao thought, her brows furrowing in concentration. The jade demon's taint it subtle, but undeniable. Golden light, almost imperceptible to the naked eye, emanated from Fuyao's palm, slowly seeping into the woman, chasing away the grayish shadows clinging to her aura. The woman's breathing deepened, the bluish tinge around her lips receding. A harsh voice shattered the tranquility. Where did this wild girl come from? Get away from my grandmother. Fuyao lifted her gaze, her eyes meeting the sharp, calculating stare of Su Jiming. He stood a few paces away, his expensive suit looking strangely out of place against the backdrop of the mountain trail. A veneer of concern masked the flicker of something darker in his eyes, something akin to fear. Fuyao recognized it. It was the same look she'd seen in the eyes of countless others who had crossed her path, a mixture of awe and apprehension in the presence of her power. He knows, she realized, a chilling certainty settling in her heart. He knows what I am. Su Jiming took a step closer, his voice laced with thinly veiled threat. If something really happened to our old lady, can you afford it? Fuyao stood, her movements fluid and graceful, a stark contrast to his rigid posture. She dusted off her hands, the golden light fading from her palms. The elderly woman stirred, her eyes fluttering open. A flicker of recognition sparked in her clouded gaze. Jiming, she whispered, her voice weak but clear. Grandmother, you're all right. Relief, genuine this time, flooded Su Jiming's face. He turned back to Fuyao, his expression shifting again, hardening into a mask of suspicion. Who are you? What did you do to her? Fuyao met his gaze unflinchingly. Inside, a storm of conflicting emotions raged. She could reveal herself, expose his treachery right here and now. But doing so would disrupt the delicate balance she had maintained for so long, potentially jeopardizing her mission to defeat the Jade Demon. And Liu Beichen, she couldn't risk exposing him to the dangers that would undoubtedly follow. I am Yi Fuyao, she said, her voice calm and steady, a friend of the Liu family. She offered a small, polite bow, the gesture carefully calculated to disarm him. I happened to be passing by and saw your grandmother collapse. I have some knowledge of traditional medicine. It was a lie, of course, but a necessary one. Su Jiming's eyes narrowed, scrutinizing her every move. He didn't believe her, not for a second. Fuyao could sense the wheels turning in his mind, calculating the risks, weighing the options. He suspects, but he doesn't have proof, she thought, her heart pounding against her ribs. Not yet. A friend of the Liu family, he repeated, a sneer twisting his lips. I haven't heard of you. I'm a recent acquaintance, Fu Yao replied smoothly, her mind racing. She needed to divert his attention, buy herself some time. I'm actually here to see Mr. Liu. The mention of Liu Beichen's name had the desired effect. Su Jiaming's eyes flickered, a flicker of unease replacing the suspicion. He glanced back at his grandmother, who was now sitting up, looking considerably better. He knew he couldn't afford to have her questioning his actions, especially after she had witnessed Fu Yao's apparent healing abilities. Mr. Liu is indisposed, he said finally, his voice tight. I understand, Fu Yao replied, her tone soft and sympathetic. But it's important that I speak with him. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. It concerns his health. Su Jiaming's face paled. He knew. He knew that she knew. The carefully constructed mask of concern crumbled, revealing the raw greed and malice beneath. He began, his voice trembling with barely suppressed rage. Fu Yao cut him off, her voice low and steady. The curse you placed on him is weakening him. The jade demon's influence is spreading. The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. The rustling leaves seemed to hold their breath, the air thick with tension. Su Jiaming stared at her, his face a mixture of shock and fury. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Fu Yao continued, her voice unwavering. I can break the curse, but I need your cooperation. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. Unless, of course, you want to see your uncle suffer. The silence stretched, punctuated only by the chirping of crickets and the distant call of a bird. Finally, Su Jiaming spoke, his voice barely a whisper. What do you want? Fu Yao smiled, a small, almost imperceptible curve of her lips. I want you to tell me everything. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the mountainside. As Fu Yao listened to Su Jiaming's confession, a chilling certainty settled in her heart. The battle against the jade demon was far from over. It had only just begun. And this unexpected alliance, forged in the shadow of a curse, would be her most dangerous weapon yet. But as she looked towards the Liu family estate, nestled in the valley below, a different kind of unease began to stir within her. She had entered into this game to protect Liu Beichen, to break the curse that bound him. But what would happen when the curse was broken, when the danger had passed? What would become of the fragile bond that had formed between them, a bond forged in desperation and shrouded in secrets? The answer, like the swirling mists that clung to the mountain peaks, remained elusive, veiled in uncertainty. The air in Liu Beichen's bedroom hung heavy, a suffocating blend of antiseptic and the lingering scent of sickness. Pale moonlight filtered through the gauzy curtains, casting long, skeletal shadows across the room. Fu Yao stood beside the bed, her gaze fixed on the still form beneath the covers. Liu Beichen, his face etched with the weariness of his affliction, slept on, oblivious to the power that thrummed beneath her fingertips. A flicker of something akin to pity, an emotion she rarely allowed herself, softened her expression. He was a pawn in a larger game, a sacrifice to his nephew's avarice. But beneath the curse, she sensed a resilience, a spark of defiance that resonated with her own spirit. Taking a deep breath, she extended her hand, her palm hovering just above his chest. A faint golden light, almost imperceptible to the naked eye, emanated from her fingers, weaving a delicate web of energy around him. She could feel the resistance of the curse, a dark, insidious force clinging to his life force. It writhed and pulsed beneath her touch, a venomous serpent unwilling to relinquish its prey. Her lips tightened into a thin line. This wouldn't be easy. Su Jiaming's dabblings in dark magic were crude, but potent. He hadn't just cursed his uncle, he'd tethered him to a malevolent entity, feeding off his vitality. Hours bled into one another. The golden light intensified, pulsating with a rhythmic hum that filled the room. Beads of sweat formed on Fuyao's brow, her concentration unwavering. She could sense the curse weakening, its grip loosening on Liu Beichen's life force. With a final surge of energy, she pushed through the remaining barrier. The dark energy recoiled, a silent scream echoing in the metaphysical realm. Liu Beichen stirred, his eyes fluttering open. He looked at her, confusion clouding his features. He began, his voice raspy. For a moment, he seemed to struggle with the reality of his situation, the feeling of his limbs, the absence of the familiar ache that had been his constant companion for so long. He slowly sat up, testing the movement of his arms and legs, an incredulous look spreading across his face. I can move. He swung his legs over the side of the bed, his feet touching the floor for the first time in months. The sudden rush of sensation was overwhelming. He stood, a little unsteady at first, then took a tentative step, then another. He looked down at his hands, flexing his fingers, as if rediscovering his own body. I am healed. Fuyao watched him, her expression carefully neutral. The emotional turmoil swirling within her, a mixture of relief, satisfaction, and a strange sense of detachment, was something she couldn't afford to reveal. The curse is broken, she said, her voice even and controlled. Liu Beichen turned back to her, his eyes filled with a gratitude so raw, so unguarded, that it made her uncomfortable. You saved me, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. She inclined her head, acknowledging his words, but her mind was already racing ahead. This wasn't over. The Jade Demon, the source of Su Zheming's power, was still out there. And as long as it remained, the threat to Liu Beichen, and to the delicate balance of the world, would persist. There's something else, she said, cutting through the charged silence. Liu Beichen's mother, alerted by the commotion, rushed into the room, her face etched with worry. But as her eyes fell upon her son, standing tall and unassisted, her expression transformed into one of stunned disbelief. Beichen. You're walking. He embraced his mother, a silent exchange of relief and joy passing between them. Fuyao watched the scene unfold, a detached observer in a drama she had orchestrated. Mother, Liu Beichen said, pulling back slightly, this is Miss Yi. She healed me. His mother turned to Fuyao, her eyes shining with tears. She grasped Fuyao's hands, her grip surprisingly strong. Thank you, Miss Yi. Thank you for saving my son. Fuyao offered a polite smile, a carefully constructed facade that hid the complex web of thoughts and emotions churning within her. There's one more thing, she repeated, her voice firm and unwavering. To ensure the curse doesn't return, we need to take a precautionary measure. Liu Beichen and his mother exchanged puzzled glances. I want to marry him, Fuyao stated, her words hanging in the air like a pronouncement. The silence that followed was absolute. Liu Beichen's mother's jaw dropped, her expression shifting from gratitude to utter bewilderment. Liu Beichen himself stared at her, speechless. The color drained from his face, then slowly returned, tinged with a faint blush. Marry me, he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. Fuyao met his gaze, her expression unwavering. Yes. It's the only way. She didn't elaborate, leaving the explanation deliberately vague. She knew that the true nature of her request, the intricate workings of the spiritual realm, were beyond their comprehension. But the air of authority in her voice, the absolute certainty in her eyes, left no room for argument. Later, when they were alone, Liu Beichen finally found his voice. Miss Yi, he began, his tone hesitant, I appreciate your concern, but marriage seems a rather drastic measure. I'm sure there are other ways to. Fuyao cut him off, her voice sharp. There aren't. And don't call me Miss Yi. My name is Fuyao. Fuyao, he repeated, testing the name on his tongue. This marriage, it wouldn't be a real marriage, would it? A strange mixture of hope and apprehension flickered in his eyes. A ghost of a smile played on Fuyao's lips. "I have 1,000 ways to divorce you, Liu Beichen," she said, her voice soft but laced with steel. "Don't worry. This charade won't last forever." The implications of her words hung heavy in the air. A marriage of convenience. A temporary alliance. But beneath the surface, a current of something else, something unspoken, crackled between them. The game had begun, and neither of them knew where it would lead. Su Jiaming, lurking in the shadows, plotting his next move, was blissfully unaware that he had just set in motion a chain of events that would spiral far beyond his control. The Jade Demon, its tendrils reaching out from the darkness, sensed a shift in the balance of power. The fight had just begun. Sunlight streamed through the sheer curtains, painting the room in a soft, ethereal glow. Liu Beichen watched the dust motes dance in the golden rays, a strange sense of unreality clinging to him. The woman who claimed to be his savior, his destined bride, sat across from him, her expression unreadable. He had seen flashes of power in her eyes, heard the conviction in her voice, but a part of him, the rational, grounded part, still struggled to reconcile the extraordinary with the everyday. Kunlun Saint, he echoed, the words tasting foreign on his tongue. He could feel the phantom ache in his legs, the constant reminder of his vulnerability. Could this woman, this enigmatic presence who had entered his life so abruptly, truly hold the key to his freedom? Fuyao met his gaze, a flicker of something akin to amusement in her eyes. He still doubts. Understandable. This world is built on skepticism, on the tangible. It's a title, nothing more, she said, her voice soft yet firm, each syllable precise. What matters is what I can do. She leaned forward, her shadow falling across him like a shroud. Your nephew, Su Jiaming, has woven a blood curse, binding your life force to a jade demon. With each passing day, it feeds on your vitality, drawing you closer to death. A chill ran down Liu Beichen's spine, despite the warmth of the sun. He had suspected foul play, but the reality of a curse, a jade demon, was far more sinister than he could have imagined. A demon? Such things exist. But this woman, she speaks with such certainty. Fuyao continued, her voice a low murmur, weaving a tale of ancient powers and dark magic. The curse is complex, intricate. It requires a counterforce, a balancing energy, which is where I come in. She paused, a faint smile playing on her lips. The wedding, Liu Beichen, is not merely a formality. It is a ritual, a binding of our energies, a necessary step to break the curse. He stared at her, his mind reeling. A wedding? To a woman he barely knew. Yet, the fear of the encroaching darkness, the desperation to reclaim his life, outweighed his hesitation. What choice do I have? To cling to disbelief and wither away? Or to grasp at this improbable hope, this extraordinary woman? And if the wedding fails, he asked, his voice barely a whisper. It won't, Fuyao stated, her eyes blazing with an inner fire. I am his destined one, she murmured, more to herself than to him. Then, louder, with absolute conviction, I am his future wife. The air crackled with an unseen energy. Liu Beichen felt a strange pull towards her, a sense of connection that defied logic. Destined? Is such a thing possible? He could see the unwavering resolve in her eyes, and a sliver of hope, fragile yet persistent, began to bloom within him. As dusk settled, casting long shadows across the room, Fuyao began the ritual. The air grew thick with an otherworldly energy. Strange symbols flickered in her eyes, ancient chants whispered from her lips. Liu Beichen watched, mesmerized, as she wove a tapestry of unseen forces around him. I'll let you go today, Fuyao's voice echoed in the room, directed not at him, but at something unseen, something malevolent. Her expression hardened, the playful glint replaced by a steely determination. But try to come back, and I'll show you the true meaning of fear. Liu Beichen felt a wave of nausea wash over him, followed by a searing pain that ripped through his body. He gasped, his muscles clenching, his vision blurring. Is this it? Is this the end? He heard Fu Yao's voice, distant and soothing, like a beacon in the storm. It seems that only the most primitive method can be used. Give him my inner breath. A surge of warmth flowed into him, chasing away the pain, filling the emptiness within. He felt a tingling sensation in his legs, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. He slowly moved his toes, then his feet, then his legs. He stood up, shaky at first, but then with growing strength and confidence. He could feel the blood coursing through his veins, the life returning to his limbs. He looked at Fu Yao, his eyes filled with a mixture of awe and gratitude. She did it. She actually did it. The curse was broken. He was free. Su Jiaming stood in the shadows, his face contorted with rage. He had witnessed the entire scene, the unfolding of his meticulously crafted plan crumbling before his eyes. That woman, who is she? How could she break the curse? This isn't over. I will have my revenge. Liu Beichen's mother rushed into the room, drawn by the commotion. She stopped dead in her tracks, her eyes widening in disbelief as she saw her son standing, walking towards her. Tears streamed down her face as she embraced him, her voice choked with emotion. My Sonyery cured. You can walk again. Liu Beichen held her tight, his own eyes brimming with tears. He looked at Fu Yao, a silent acknowledgement of the profound debt he owed her. She saved me. She gave me back my life. The wedding, the curse, the extraordinary circumstances that had brought them together, it all felt surreal, yet undeniably real. He knew, with a certainty that resonated deep within his soul, that his life was forever intertwined with this remarkable woman, his Kunlun saint, his future wife. The battle was far from over, he could sense that, but for now, in this moment of reprieve, he allowed himself to feel the full weight of his gratitude, and the burgeoning of a feeling he dared not yet name. He looked at Fu Yao, and for the first time, he saw not just a savior, but a woman, complex and intriguing, and a future, filled with both promise and peril. The crystal chandeliers of the ballroom cast a shimmering net of light, reflecting off the polished marble floor and the glittering gowns of the city's elite. A hush fell over the room as the auctioneer, his voice smooth as aged brandy, introduced the next item, a dance with Liu Beichen. Su Jiaming watched from the sidelines, a cruel smile playing on his lips. This was it. His carefully orchestrated humiliation of his uncle, a public display of the man's weakness. He could almost taste victory. The opening bid was a paltry sum, a mere trifle to the assembled millionaires. But the silence that followed spoke volumes. Who would want to dance with a cripple? Su Jiaming's smile widened. He'd made sure the rumors of his uncle's deteriorating health were widespread. Across the room, Liu Beichen sat impassive, his gaze fixed on the swirling patterns of the marble floor. He felt a strange detachment, as if watching a play unfold where he was both the actor and the audience. The silence, thick with unspoken pity and thinly veiled disdain, was a familiar weight. He had grown accustomed to it, the constant reminder of his limitations. He closed his eyes briefly, a flicker of resignation passing through him. He knew Jiaming was behind this charade. The boy's ambition was a venomous serpent, slowly constricting the life out of the Liu family. Fu Yao watched from the shadows, her heart a clenched fist in her chest. She felt the sting of each silent judgment, each averted gaze. They saw only weakness in Beichen, but she saw resilience, a quiet strength burning beneath the surface. The jade demon's curse was an insidious poison, but it hadn't touched the core of the man. She saw his worth, the brilliance that still shone despite the shadows. And she wouldn't let them diminish him, not tonight. 50 million, a tentative voice broke the silence. It was a token bid, a gesture of charity more than genuine interest. Su Jiaming's smile faltered. This wasn't going as planned. He needed to push, to drive the knife deeper into his uncle's pride. 80 million, he called out, his voice laced with false generosity. The room buzzed with whispers. This was getting interesting. A power play, a family feud unfolding in the gilded cage of high society. Liu Beichen's mother clutched her pearl necklace, her heart heavy with worry. She couldn't bear to see her son subjected to this public spectacle. She looked at Fuyao, a silent plea in her eyes. The young woman's calm demeanor, her unwavering gaze fixed on Beichen, gave her a sliver of hope. She knew, somehow, that this strange girl held the key to their salvation. Fuyao took a deep breath, the scent of lilies and champagne filling her lungs. It was time. The auctioneer's hammer was poised, ready to seal Beichen's humiliation. 1 billion yuan. The words echoed through the ballroom, silencing the whispers and halting the hammer mid-air. All eyes turned to her, shock and disbelief etched on their faces. 1 billion. For a dance. It was an absurd sum, a blatant display of power. Su Jiaming's face contorted in rage. This wasn't part of his script. Who was this woman? He felt a prickle of unease, a premonition that something was about to go terribly wrong. Liu Beichen looked at Fuyao, his eyes wide with surprise. He hadn't expected this extravagant gesture of defiance. A strange warmth spread through his chest, a flicker of hope igniting in the ashes of his resignation. He felt a connection to her, a shared understanding that transcended words. The auctioneer, momentarily stunned, recovered his composure. 1 billion yuan. Do I hear any other bids? Silence. The room was holding its breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop. The hammer fell. Sold. To the lady in red. Fuyao walked towards Beichen, her red dress a splash of vibrant color against the muted backdrop of the ballroom. As she reached him, she extended her hand, a small, knowing smile playing on her lips. May I have this dance? Liu Beichen placed his hand in hers, feeling a surge of energy flow through him. He stood up, the paralysis that had chained him to his wheelchair gone. A gasp rippled through the room. He was standing, walking, as if the curse had never existed. The jade demon's hold was broken. Su Jiaming watched in horror, his carefully constructed plans crumbling around him. His face, once smug and confident, was now a mask of fear and disbelief. He felt a cold dread creeping up his spine. He had underestimated Fuyao, the seemingly ordinary woman who now stood beside his uncle, radiating power and defiance. Liu Beichen's mother wept openly, tears of joy streaming down her face. Her son was healed, the Liu family's legacy secured. She looked at Fuyao with gratitude and awe. This young woman was a miracle, a blessing bestowed upon their family. As the music started, a slow, romantic waltz, Beichen led Fuyao onto the dance floor. They moved as one, their bodies swaying in perfect harmony. In that moment, amidst the stunned silence and the whispers of disbelief, their eyes met. And in that shared gaze, they found something more profound than a dance, a connection forged in the crucible of adversity, a bond that would defy even the darkest magic. The whispers around them faded into the background, replaced by the soft melody of the waltz and the silent promise of a future together. The shadows of the Liu family mansion stretched long and skeletal across the manicured lawn, the moon hanging like a spectral coin in the inky sky. Inside, the air crackled with an unnatural tension. Fuyao stood before Liu Beichen, a serene mask barely concealing the tempest raging within her. His vulnerability, the pallor of his skin beneath the flickering lamplight, stirred a protective fierceness she hadn't anticipated. He watched her, his gaze a complex mixture of hope and trepidation. Could she truly do this? Could she defy the insidious magic that clung to him like a shroud? Doubt gnawed at her, a whisper against the certainty she projected. She was the Kunlun saint, yes, but this curse yet felt ancient, malevolent, woven from a darkness that chilled her to the bone. Su Jiaming's laughter, sharp and brittle, echoed from the hallway. So, the famed Kunlun girl finally reveals herself, he sneered, stepping into the room. His eyes, glittering with triumph, flicked between Fuyao and the paralyzed Liu Beichen. A touching tableau, wouldn't you say? But ultimately, futile. You underestimate the power of Kunlun, Fuyao stated, her voice a low, resonant hum. Each word was a carefully placed stone in the wall she was building between them, a barrier of will against his malice. Inwardly, she braced herself. The confrontation she'd been dreading was finally here. Power? Su Jiaming scoffed. You can't possibly comprehend the forces I've unleashed. The Jade Demon, I know of the Jade Demon, Fuyao interrupted, her voice gaining an edge. The name itself tasted like ash in her mouth. A legacy of darkness that had haunted her lineage for generations. Her hand instinctively went to the jade pendant hidden beneath her clothes, a physical reminder of the burden she carried. Then you know its power, Su Jiaming hissed, his face contorted in a mask of hatred. And you know you cannot stop it. He raised his hands, and the air around him shimmered, darkening into a swirling vortex of shadow. The great jade demon. Please revive. The room plunged into an icy chill. Liu Beichen's breath hitched in his throat, his eyes wide with fear. He wanted to reach for Fuyao, to shield her from the encroaching darkness, but his body remained a useless cage. His helplessness fueled a desperate rage. He hated it, this vulnerability, this reliance on a woman he barely knew. Fuyao, however, remained unmoved. She met Su Jiaming's gaze, her own eyes blazing with an inner fire. You've made a grave mistake, Su Jiaming, she said, her voice resonating with a newfound authority. The Jade Demon is not yours to command. The shadows coiled tighter, a palpable presence in the room. Fuyao closed her eyes for a moment, drawing strength from the ancient power that flowed through her veins. This was it. The moment of truth. When she opened her eyes, they glowed with an otherworldly light. A wave of pure energy erupted from her, shattering the oppressive darkness. The room lit up with a blinding flash, and the shadows recoiled as if burned. Su Jiaming screamed, a sound of pure agony, as the demonic energy he'd summoned turned against him. The scene shifted, a dizzying blur of motion and light. One moment, they were in the confines of the Liu family mansion, the next, they were standing on the precipice of a towering cliff, the wind whipping Fuyao's hair around her face. The Jade Demon, a monstrous entity of swirling shadows and malevolent energy, loomed before her, its presence a suffocating weight on her soul. Fuyao stood firm, her resolve unwavering. This was her destiny. This was the battle she'd been preparing for her entire life. She channeled the power of Kunlun, a force of pure light and ancient magic, and met the demon's gaze. The battle raged, a clash of light and darkness that shook the very foundations of the world. Fuyao fought with a ferocity born of desperation and duty, pushing herself beyond her limits. She could feel the demon's power seeking to consume her, to corrupt her, but she held on, her will a shield against its insidious influence. Then, just as she felt her strength waning, she saw it. A flicker of vulnerability in the demon's swirling form. A weakness. With a final, desperate surge of power, she struck, and the demon roared in agony as its form began to dissipate. The scene shifted again, back to the Liu family mansion. The shadows had receded, leaving the room bathed in an ethereal light. Su Jiaming lay on the floor, unconscious, the demonic energy that had possessed him completely gone. Liu Beichen stared at Fuyao, his eyes filled with a mixture of awe and wonder. He could feel the curse lifting, the paralysis that had held him captive for so long finally receding. He could move. He could feel. Lu Beichen's mother rushed into the room, her face etched with worry. She stopped short, her gaze moving from her unconscious nephew to her son, who was now slowly rising to his feet. Her eyes widened in disbelief, then filled with tears of relief. Fuyao, exhausted but triumphant, turned to Lu Beichen's mother. A faint smile touched her lips. "The problem of raising a father-in-law," she said, her voice laced with a hint of playful exhaustion, "is solved by your beloved." Lu Beichen's mother stared at her, then at her son, then back at Fuyao. A slow smile spread across her face. "Indeed," she murmured, her voice thick with emotion. She looked at Fuyao with newfound respect and gratitude. This extraordinary woman, this Kunlun saint, had not only saved her son but had brought a miracle into their lives. The future of the Lu family, once shrouded in darkness, now seemed bathed in a hopeful light. The night stretched on, the silence broken only by the soft murmur of voices and the gentle rustle of leaves outside. The crisis had passed. The curse was broken. And in the heart of the Lu family mansion, a new chapter was beginning, a chapter woven with the threads of destiny, magic, and an unexpected love.